So Jade, what recipe are we making today?
Bolognese.
And whose recipe is it?
Grandma's.
Grandma's. Okay, so what have you got there, Jade?
Garlic press, I think.
Yep, but and you're pressing garlic.
Mm-hmm.
Homegrown. We also grew all the onions that are on the cutting board that you're going to be chopping. Now, we are doing the garlic first because garlic needs to breathe.
And we also already peeled it all.
Yeah, we did.
Which makes it a lot easier.
Well, we peeled it all because we had so many cloves, but normally you would just put the clove with its paper in there and it would press right through the paper and you would just throw the paper away. But Jade's got 2 or 3 little cloves at a time. And you can take that little Quick paring knife when you're ready and scrape the back of the garlic press to make sure you get all of that off and into your skillet.
And safe for children if they actually know how to use a knife.
Well, it's a tiny little knife, but it is incredibly sharp. That will cut a steak. Okay. All right, so you are going to finish with the garlic and then chop up all the onions, and we're going to brown those for just a moment before. Leave it on the side because it's probably a little garlic on the inside that I can get out of there for you. And you're going to want to be on your step stools so that you have leverage. Yep. We're using the bigger cutting board today, so Jade should not run out of room. And remember, the important part is to start on one side of your cutting board and just put enough under there so that your chopper has enough room to move around. We're doing a mix of white and red onion because we're doing actually 4.5 pounds of meat. And I wanted to make sure that we had a fair amount of onion, and we had so many red onions from our garden already, and I don't want them to spoil. So we're just mixing it up. Red onions are a little bit stronger, so I'm going to use a little less in total by combining red and white than I would have if they were just white. Okay.
I'll wash my hands right after.
Yep, you will. Just as a point of note, if you're ever using a red onion in a salad and it's too strong of a flavor, you can rinse it in cold water and then slice it up and put it in your dish. It is totally fine. It'll take away the stronger element of the flavor, but it'll still have plenty of tastiness left in it for your dish.
Sometimes it's really hard.
You're doing, whoops. Okay.
That was funny.
You remember
put it back on.
Okay, so look at the 2 pieces. It's like a puzzle, and you just slightly turn it.
There.
There you go. Okay.
Well, that was a little funny.
Sometimes it happens. That chopper is actually 17 years old. That's my first chopper. And because we have a sharpening blade, or sharpening tool, I use that to sharpen that blade. Are your eyes getting to you? I mean, this fume's getting to your eyes? All right, remember, close your mouth. That's one of the tricks. You close your mouth, and if you had sunglasses you could wear, or goggles. No, stop. You're over the gray. You're over the gray. You don't want to cut through the gray. The gray is your non-slip rubber edges, but it's also your measuring tool so that you always can cut your food evenly, because food that's cut evenly cooks evenly. Okay, so chop up a little more. Okay. Okay. Just, you got it. Position it right over those uncut pieces. Chop, chop, chop. So easy, an 8-year-old can do it. Okay. Okay. Put the chopper down inside the skillet so that all the juice will go in there, and I'll take care of wiping that all off. Take your handy scraper and scrape everything into the skillet. Remember, use the gray side of your handy scraper. You have it backwards in your hand. Okay, great. You only need one if you're going to slide it into your cutting board like that. If you want to lift it off your cutting board, you'll want 2 handy scrapers. But this is much easier for my little girl whose eyes are tearing. Okay, why don't you go outside and get some fresh air. Okay, so our meat has been cooking for about 5 or 6 minutes. We have 4.5 pounds of meat in here, and all I'm going to do now is start using the mix and chop to break it up a little bit. And you can see
pink on the inside, brown on the outside.
We've got a little bit more cooking to do, and what we're really doing here is saving time. I am actually cooking meat for 2 different dishes. Dinner tonight, and dinner in the future. I have no idea what dinner it's going to be, but we put enough garlic and onions in here to satisfy 4.5 pounds of meat. We really only want about 2.5 to 3 pounds for tonight's dinner. So that's going to leave us at least 1.5 pounds for the next meal. And we're going to let that cool off in a bowl, and then we're going to freeze it. But since we were chopping onions and doing garlic, the beauty is that by putting those flavors in the meat, it's cooking into the meat, and we're going to add some of our Italian seasoning to it. And that way when it cools down, and then when we freeze it, it's already seasoned cooked meat. Seasoned cooked meat saves you time because you've done all the chopping, you've done all the cooking, and because the meat is broken up into pieces, when you freeze it, it actually defrosts faster than if it had been one block of chopped meat that hadn't been cooked yet. So it saves you a lot of time to cook once, but eat 2 or 3 times. All right, we're gonna put our lid back on and let this go for a few minutes more. And while that's cooking, we've got some things to do over here. So here's what's really cool. Last year, we had some friends who had abundance in their garden with peppers. And I took those peppers and I roasted them, and then I blended them up and I froze them. And I marked them roasted blended peppers, good for Bolognese, because we're gonna add this to today's sauce, and it's a fantastic flavor, and it's all kinds of peppers. But for texture, we wanna have some fresher peppers too. So we're gonna go ahead, we've got a fresh red and green pepper. And
Mom.
Yeah?
If I could use the finger thing that doesn't let you cut your fingers, could I try?
Sure, I'll let you do the red pepper. How's that?
Yay.
Okay.
I love red peppers.
So by just cutting off the top, all I have to do is pull the stem out, but the rest of the top of that is usable. And if I had my scoop loop, I'd use it, but right now I'm just gonna use my fingers and pinch right over my garbage bowl so that any of the seeds that fall out go right in there. And I use all the white parts, so I have little waste at all.
The white parts are good.
They are good.
They don't taste much different.
Yeah, I think they're just as sweet as the rest.
Yep.
So basically, I'm going to use a good sharp knife, and I'm just going to cut it into long strips, not julienne. I don't want them too thin, because I want to be able to enjoy the texture of this in the Bolognese. And we're just going to slice them up.
Grandma makes it so good. And last time we made it, it was so perfect. It tasted basically like Grandma's.
Well, we're using Grandma's recipe. And Jade, do you remember what the keys were to Grandma's recipe? You've already mixed up one of them. Do you want to talk about it and show them?
It's some gravy. We used 2 packets of gravy and then mixed a little water into it, and it goes into the tomato sauce, and that is what changed it from spaghetti and meatballs tomato sauce to more Bolognese flavored.
So it's more of a beef flavored sauce.
Yeah.
And that's because we're using a beef gravy mix. We actually use 2 whole packets because we're making a big pot.
That's what I said.
Yep. And the pot that we have on the stove cooking our meat, by the way, is a 12-inch family skillet. And we're really making plenty of food, not just for dinner tonight, but for leftovers. Or we could freeze a portion of it completely cooked and just know that we have food for another time. And I'm checking because the cap on the pepper had a couple bad spots, so we want to make sure that we look that through.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to eat bad stuff. That sounds pretty bad.
Okay.
Or
You
not
can go ahead and
tasty.
pause for now, Jade. Okay, so our meat is cooking, and Jade just got a little lesson on how to use the knife and the finger guard. I have never given her a sharp knife like this before. She's using a 4.5-inch serrated knife, incredibly sharp, that could cut straight through her finger if she wasn't careful. But she's using something called a finger guard, which we used to sell. We don't anymore, but I have these. And anyway, they are a lifesaver because they allow you to protect your fingers from the blade. And they have a little jagged edge at the bottom so that you can still sort of grip the food and hold it in place while you cut.
Is this good?
Pretty good. There might be 1 or 2 big chunks. Just leave those for the next time we cut, but put the other pieces in the prep bowl.
So these 2 probably are too big, right?
Yep. We'll just want to cut those in half. Okay. All right. All right, while Jade is doing that, we're going to go check on our meat and see how we're doing over here. And mind you, off to the side, we have our sauces ready. We're going to be using 2 jars of tomato sauce. One of them happens to be homemade. The other is store-bought. I only had one big jar of homemade sauce left, so we are going to combine the two. And the beauty of the mix and chop, like I said before, is you can chop all of this meat right in your skillet really easily. And if you can manage to cook once and eat 2 or 3 times, you have saved yourself so much effort down the road, and you're not paying for pre-seasoned, pre-packaged meat at the supermarket. You are doing it yourself at home with just the aid of a couple of tools. And the other thing is the skillet needs to be big enough, and you want a flat bottom so that you can evenly cook all your meat at once. This skillet and all the Pampered Chef cookware happens to be able to also be bakeware. It all is oven safe. You just need to use oven mitts on the handles, because the handles will conduct heat in the oven, but they won't melt or anything. And you've got a multi-purpose tool even in your skillet. So you want to do a 12-inch pineapple upside down cake, or a harvest apple skillet cake, or a turtle fudge skillet cake. You can cook cakes right in here between using your cooktop and your oven with no problem at all. And look at that, we have chopped up all this meat so easily. And we're going to pull off half of this, let it cool off, and use it in another recipe. We'll be back in a moment.